Yeah. Okay, well, welcome one and all to this, the very first meeting of a council committee in 2026, this being the Estate Management Committee. The first thing, obviously, are representations from interested parties, and there are no interested parties at this particular meeting. So the first thing we move on to then is apologies for absence. John,
I'll tell you.
I think we have a full quorum, so there are no apologies for absence, so we do not need to accept any of those apologies. The next agenda item, therefore, is the usual standing item to do with declarations of interest. Firstly, to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests, and secondly, to declare any other interests. Would any member of the committee like to declare interests in relation to the agenda items? No, in which case then I will move on. I've already mentioned that we have no representations of interested parties, which then moves us on to EM 25153, which are the minutes of the previous meeting, which were held on the 2nd of December last calendar year. Present at that meeting were James, Val, Fian, Owen, John and myself. So we have a full house like 1-2. Do any of you want to raise any issues in relation to the accuracy, or are we happy to approve those minutes? You're proposing, you are, thank you, Val. Do we have a seconder? Oh, blimey. A full hand went up at once. I caught, partly because he's closer.
Yes, right.
I caught Ian's out of my eye first. So, seconded by Councillor Clark. All those in favour. So, it's three of you put your hands up already. I think we could take that for granted. Thank you very much. If I can borrow your pen, Val, I will just sign those. And then.
Matt, can I just ask, when you put the date, don't use Roman numerals, please?
Yeah.
Use actual numbers.
6126. Well, big one.
Try and get the actual year right.
I had to Google it and download the list just to make sure the date was right. And then when I happened to speak to Emma about it, she said it really should just be our numbers.
Right, that's all done. Super. So then we move on to reports. The first of which is to receive the I&E report for the properties and open spaces. I'm not sure, I didn't see that earlier today.
Both Emma and Paul haven't been.
Yeah, with the holiday,
yeah.
etc., etc. So
the
it's not
figures that are on there are from last month, but they won't be that much.
So we'll carry that over to next month.
Yeah.
We have, of course, received the monthly properties and open spaces report that we'll refer to later on. And likewise, I didn't actually see the action plan there either, but maybe I missed over that. But that is no different from how it's been for the last however many months. So we have all received those documents. Would anybody like to comment on them? In which case then I will move forward to the next. We've got several agenda items, all of which there's nothing to report. The first of which is Fletton House, the second of which is workshop vehicles equipment, and linked to that grass cutting, and then the hub. nothing to report on all of those, so I'm just going to quickly pause in case there's anything that anybody does want to raise in relation to those, in which case I will move on. So then the next agenda item is EN 25158, where we do have a paper, and this is to do with the lift in the courthouse, which has been discussed quite a lot recently in other meetings. So it's perhaps appropriate that it's also on the agenda here today. This is really about what, if anything, we need to do in regards to refurbishing the lift, and in particular, what our legal obligations are. You would have all seen the papers, plural, in relation to this. I'm going to really take any comments, and then we can decide what our next steps are going to be. Would anybody want to comment on this first and foremost? I think, James, let's take you first.
I may have missed it, but in all the assessment of do we need to maintain the lift, I saw an answer to the question, if you only have a lift and it's knackered, what do you need to do? I didn't see an answer to the question, if you have a lift and something else, do you have to maintain the lift? Yeah. Did I miss anything is my question.
I have the same question, so hopefully we neither of us did.
Was that the same question?
That's
or
all.
observation? Sorry, we've got an additional point that.
Well, only to ask what the minimal repairs would be that we actually need to do, given that we're undergoing a evaluation of the courthouse. I'd rather not spend any money at all, unless we absolutely legally have to. But to James's point, we're comparing lift to no lift, and we clearly have to have something because of the Disability Discrimination Act. We've got a chairlift, so I've seen no comparison between lift and chairlift. If we've got rid of the lift, what the chairlift do is the question, and we don't know because the report doesn't compare the two.
You probably only, if you only had the lift, I think you would be illegal because you have to not use the lift in the event of something like a fire.
Yeah.
But if you decommission the lift, we haven't had that.
We'd have to put another staircase in or something, I think, as well, because the staircase we've got is quite narrow and difficult to get down.
Well, you have to put another staircase in. If you didn't have a lift, you wouldn't have to put another staircase in. As I understand it, you've got a lift. You can't take the lift out unless either you make it unavailable to the public and you only have the museum on the ground floor, option one. Option two, you've got a chair lift. Will that do instead? We don't know because that's not been included in the report.
Yeah, that's it.
But if there are only stairs, I don't think there's an obligation to have a lift as well as stairs. So to me, the first question is, will a chairlift do? Because if it does, we should be thinking about whether we need to repair the lift or decommission it.
Ian, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was listening to the cricket at 4 o'clock this morning, and I suddenly remembered the last time we considered this, we did this literature review. So I thought I'd print it off for you from 2022. And excitingly, it also has a list on it of the problems that were listed on the report in 2022, many of which are still problematic.
Yeah.
And perhaps it just is part of the granularity of what we're discussing. Is it a public building or is it an office block with a museum attached? Secondly, does the Disability Discrimination Act demand equal access to all aspects? Because if not, Queen Victoria Hall is in trouble, as is most of Amber School, most of lots of other places. And then thirdly, the chair versus the stairs versus the fire versus the decommissioned lift. And one of the points they make in the two reports we've had saying the lift has got problems a reference to the British standard. We looked at that back in 22, and this idea that you can actually keep a lift going a long time, as long as you have a programme of planned work on it, etc., etc. So there's lots and lots of nuance within all of it. Well, let's see what other people think.
I mean, you made a point that I was going to make, and that is that, I mean, one of the problems is that the question is potentially misleading. It says, if we have a lift in our public building, I'm not convinced the courthouse is a public building. It's not open to the public. It's essentially rented out to private leaseholders. If they arrange visitors to visit them, yes, they may be members of the public, but that doesn't make it a public building. In the same way that if I go and visit my solicitor in the town, I'm not going to a public building.
Well, we have a museum, which probably would make it into a public building.
We do, and that's, you're absolutely right, and part of the problem with that is that an element of the museum is actually on the first floor.
Yeah.
Could we not make it ground floor only?
One of the most popular attractions of the museum is on the first floor, which is the old lock-up jail room. Where people don't use the lift to get there anyway, they go up some relatively narrow stairs.
I think the problem is because we've got a lift, it's not as though we're being asked, can we put a lift in? Because there you could use cost as a way of saying it's not reasonable steps, because the DDA requires reasonable steps. So to put one in, it could be argued, we've got one.
Yeah.
So the question is not, do we have one or not? The question is, we've got one. Is it in a public building? Do the public need to use it? And if we have part of the museum on the first floor, clearly there's an option that they do. But we've got a chair lift. So it comes back to the basic question which James raised and I wanted to raise too, which is the comparison is not lift against no lift, it's lift against chair lift. Because if the chair lift will suffice, decommission the thing.
Job done. I think that's my feeling too, is the chairlift provides a means of access to someone who can't walk up the stairs. And therefore the lift itself, which is going to become increasingly expensive to maintain and replace, is a significant cost.
The other aspect that I wondered about, having read the document, is leaving aside the museum, which clearly is public. For those people who are renting offices, whether or not, given that many of their leases would have predated the lift, shall we say, being non-operational, whether or not, having read this, whether that actually constitutes a change in the landlord-leasee's arrangement. So, I think it's still a vexed question. It's a simple answer. We have been asked to decide what our next steps should be. And quite frankly, I'm a bit of a loss to quite know what they should be. But James, give us some light on this.
So firstly, I think we need to identify all the questions we need answers to. So I think your question about how does it affect our tenants' relationship is absolutely valid. And because that is then subject to a contract, we need a legal advice on that. I think we need legal advice on the reports that we've got and whatever about whether we're obliged to maintain the lift separate to whatever agreement we have with our tenants. So we've identified 2 questions here, but I would be loath to say that in 10 minutes we have identified every question we're going to have in making a decision on this. So I think we do need to spend some time, either now or as a working party or at some other point to be clear about what all the questions are, and then work out with whom we engage to get those questions answered for us.
Yeah. And I think this is an important first step, but as you rightly say, I think what it's done is actually just simply unwrap certain other issues to which we don't have answers. And as you rightly say, we are not necessarily the experts that come up with all the right questions anyway. So in order to suggest next steps, I'm trying to just summarise what you've just said, James. Realistically, we require some extra consultation. You were suggesting that the consultation is really in two parts. One for the council, whether it be this group or some other group within the council, to think harder about what the implications of what we've had so far actually are. As you rightly say, we've identified some immediate further questions, but there may be others. And then secondly, clearly having formulated these, going to appropriate expert advice to see what our liability may or may not be. So that's kind of the next steps, but it's not concrete.
I just have one question, which is, I'm not sure what other questions we can be asking, but that takes further consideration, I guess. But we do have two questions now, don't we? And both of those seem to me to be quite germane to unwrap any other later questions. So one is seeking legal advice on whether a chairlift is a suitable substitute for a passenger lift, given that it's only used for individuals. Because if frankly, if the answer to that is no, it's not an adequate thing, that kind of narrows down our options.
Absolutely.
If the answer is yes, then that widens our options. It might be, I think it might be useful. I'll say it, I might change my mind on this. Is it worth talking to the tenants to see how often they use the lift? Do they have access to the lift? I'm not sure, I don't know if they do.
They don't use it very often,
No.
I don't think, from what I've gathered.
We've not, as far as I'm aware, had any complaints from the sitting tenants.
No.
Nor for that matter from the museum.
No. And we keep saying about not maintaining it, we are maintaining it, but we're doing what we can to keep it alive, basically. And obviously on every report that we get, it keeps saying we don't meet current standards, they advise. But obviously if you look on the reports, number 6 is identification of any part found. Anything that is on there is actionable straight away. Anything that comes and appears in number 7 is like a recommendation, but they're not closing the lift down. So it's still functioning. It's not brilliant. The call button doesn't work, but we've done various bits to it that have been expected of us. So it's functioning, but at some point, both BES, who are insurers, people that come and look at it, and also our own chap that services it and looks after it, has said, when it does need updating, it will be substantial updating. He doesn't recommend we take the whole lift out, because that would be problematic anyway, because of how tight the space is. But he does recommend like a serious overhaul of it with the existing shaft, I think, so that we don't have the hassle of taking that out. But obviously it's still going to be very expensive.
The danger we have as a council is that if we don't make a decision either to sort it out or decommission it, and to me those are still alternatives.
Yeah.
If somebody gets injured, we run the risk of, I can't think of the phrase, but we've added to the problem. So we need to sort it, and I would start by asking, will a chair do or not?
A very quick search of Tinternet. I've got a parliamentary research file here that says the Equality Act 2010 places a duty on providers of goods, services and facilities to make reasonable adjustments in order to avoid a disabled person feeling placed at substantial disadvantage. But they talk mainly about signage and impaired hearing loops as much as anything else. We don't necessarily audit all of that to the same extent. And a well-known stairlift manufacturer, not other stairlifts are available, notes that stairlifts are entirely suitable under the reasonable adjustment section of the Equality Act 2010. And there's lots of other sites supporting that. So I think the answer to that would probably be in the positive, in which case.
You see, to me, if you haven't got any kind of function and you put in a chair, that's a reasonable adjustment. If you've got a lift, is it reasonable to say we can't afford to have a lift, so we'll have a chairlift instead?
Mm-hmm.
So we've got, can we do without? Which is slightly different from we haven't got, can we do with?
It is, but you're not putting a disabled person at a substantial disadvantage by providing a chairlift rather than a lift. It's just a
I'd
different
rather
way
that
of doing it.
legally confused.
No, absolutely, yeah. But that's the phrasing, substantial disadvantage rather than disadvantage.
Yeah. That's a good point.
One other point, then I'll come to Val and James. The other thing that is a factor here is that the museum is up for accreditation this year. All museums, all public museums have to go through accreditation, I think every 5-6 years, something like that, and the local museum has got to do it what is now this calendar year. It may be that as part of that accreditation process, issues are also raised about access to the first floor that we may have to address. Obviously, we don't know yet, but again, it's something we want to keep an eye out for. Val and then
Well,
James.
it just occurred to me, I'd be quite interested to know what we spent on the lift over the years, because I can rarely remember a time when all was well and there wasn't some problem with it. And there is a sump at the bottom, so it's going to be difficult to sort that out. Should we take the lift out? You know, we needed something in the hole, as it were. But I have to admit, it is an expensive luxury in a way.
Yeah, James.
So I heard John's suggestion to actually advance with sorting out what can we do with the lift, because if we can't not have the lift, then asking the tenants whether or not they use the lift, it becomes moot.
Yeah.
So, and then you muddy the water by sort of thinking about a few other things. But so I would like to go back to that, and I actually propose that as a way forward that says we should work out whom we need to ask to get a firm legal opinion about whether or not we have to have
I'm kind of very glad you said that, James, because that's kind of with where I was heading in terms of summation. So what we now have, thank you very much, James, is the formal proposal. Accordingly, I assume, John, you might want to second that, since it kind of vaguely came from you.
Proposal is to get legal advice on whether a chairlift would substitute for a lift. Yes, I second that.
So assuming we have a proposal and a seconder, all those in favour of working along on that basis as next steps? Excellent. So those are immediate next steps. That said, we are going to have, this is a live issue, and we are going to have to keep it on the radar. Okay, right. So we now move on to the interesting topic of car parks and toilets, of which there's nothing to report. And that then takes us to other properties.
Can I just say one thing?
Yes, you can. Yes,
Before you move on,
Yes.
about the car parks.
you
The
can.
Lumsday car park in,
Yes. Just on this
Benfield
road.
Road even.
The dual one.
Yes, they're very satisfied, the people who live adjacent to it, with what we've done.
Right,
and they applaud the reworking of the spaces.
well, there we go. That's
Therefore, we should do something
good to
good.
get a positive report.
Yep,
Feedback.
yeah.
Well done. So let's move on to our properties and open spaces, and in particular, under agenda item EM 25-16101, we have been asked to discuss the new signage suggestion for the clubs and decide next steps. Before we do that, the one thing that I was concerned when I read the document, although it's not entirely new, is that within the document it says somewhere, it says, we have attached a preliminary estimate from the sign maker. I couldn't see such an estimate. I don't know if it was just me or.
It wasn't. I think we had it the first time around.
I think it has actually been around in an email. It's just that I think we need to just remind ourselves of what that estimate is.
I'm going to hazard a guess at about £1,200.
Oh, I thought it was on the end of that document with the pictures.
It wasn't the end of mine, anyway.
No.
Whilst we're looking for that, and obviously it's important to see what the financial implications are, does anybody have any comments on this? I'm particularly wondering whether you do, Ian, since you're mentioned as someone with whom this is discussed.
I know, and I was excited with my range of views. I don't remember discussing it quite the same way, but I've found the estimate from May.
Oh, right, okay.
And the estimate, total number at bottom, including installation and dedicated delivery, as opposed to whatever other sort of delivery you might get.
As opposed to undedicated.
Just casual, leave it somewhere. Including VAT was £3,324.60.
£3,000 for that?
Yes, for a sign.
1,639 for the sign, with aluminium panel and lots of stuff. Installation, if required, of 825. Dedicated delivery of 290 plus.
And then VAT.
VAT and shipping of £16.50. Not sure that comes on, but
Yeah, dedicated.
Yeah.
I'd imagine you could probably get a better deal somewhere. But
James, I think you had your hand up.
I did. So, we are discussing, my understanding is road signage is generally county or district, not parish. So presumably we are discussing this because we own Occupation Road.
Yeah, we're effectively the landlord.
can I just, yes,
Yeah.
and a year and a half ago, someone backed into the existing one, which we then propped up.
Okay. Why did we not claim from their insurance?
Because no one knows who it was.
Okay. So it could be the kid knocked it over as opposed to going back into it or anything. Okay. Do we have absolute confirmation in terms of all of our land deeds that when we say we own the tennis club, we are referring to the part of Occupation Road outside the tennis club as well as the, so do we know that we own Occupation Road?
We're still waiting for the registry to finish off registering all of those bits. And there was some questions when they finally came up with the rugby club bit. There was some question about the actual roadway and the access. But what we decided to do, rather than take that up with the solicitors there and then with that portion of the road, wait and see what came back with the tennis club and the bowling club. And if the same thing happens with that, then to pursue it with our solicitor as a whole, the whole thing.
Has anything come back on
No, we've not heard from that.
So we don't know
We
who
still
didn't
have
own
it,
it yet.
yeah, no.
It's,
In which
well,
case,
it's
my
the
road
road,
would be, we don't do anything until we do.
The issue is about the road, not where the actual clubs are.
Sure, but if this is an occupation road sign,
Yeah.
and we don't own the road, we are not responsible for paying
No,
a road, as a road sign up on it.
Absolutely, but I'm just saying that arguably, we're not responsible for putting any signage there at all, the clubs can put their own signage there. We have a proposal, the other issue I have with this proposal is that it says, the three clubs have indicated that they are willing to contribute, but we have no idea whether this is 10%, 50%, 80%, whatever, I don't know.
Well, the item is there, perhaps the removal and the installation, which I assume is 5 plus maybe dedicated. I don't know.
So if it's only just about removing the old, then that's not really much of a contribution, because we're still going to be left with a bill of £3,000. John?
So it's interesting, I hadn't really thought of James's point, because I assumed that it was our responsibility to have the sign, but if it's not our land, we've got no right to put the sign up. But I'll leave that point for now. My point was more, it's of no advantage to the town council or the townsfolk of Bandle. It's to the advantage of the tennis club, bowls club and the local football club. So if they want a sign, they pay for it. First point. Second point, if there's a sign going up, ought it to have some consonance with other signage within the town, if it's our town council responsibility. So you look at Snipe Meadow, you look at Fletton Field, or you look at other signage around the town, this doesn't seem to match any of that. So I think James's point is probably more important, but my points are, if we do decide to put a sign up, we shouldn't pay for it at all in my view, but it should be consonant with whatever our corporate image is.
I was just going to echo that to an extent. When this first came to us, June, July, we said there was an issue of style, and we were talking about what's going to happen at Snipe Meadow and elsewhere, and whether there should be some uniformity of style, and also whether, if we're going to pay any of it, there should be some Andle Town Council, this is our land, Occupation Road is ours, and Andle Tennis Club, Andle Bowling Club and Andle Rugby Football Club are on those bits of land, which comes back to whose land it is, I suppose. And of course, I think we said we look at the uniformity when we did the walk in the summer, but then conversations about Fletton Field signage there moved on. So I think if suddenly the land registry came in tomorrow and said it's your land, absolutely. I think there is an argument to actually claim, like a dog, no, claim the land by marking it and say this is ours. But going back to conversations about Snipe Meadow, etc., having uniformity of signage in the whole riverside area and everything else means that it should be something that we like and want to have, rather than we'll just go with that.
And they should pay for it, because it's advertising there.
James, back to you, and then I'll try and sum up.
And recognising that the council has had a number of styles over the years, I would not want to be the person that told Ian Quartermain and the marketing team what style signs were going to be, because that group might come back and actually say, irrespective of what we've done in the past, the future appearance of Andle needs to look like this. So I think so once we've decided to do whether to do it, and if we are to do it, then I think Ian needs to be, or the marketing team needs to be involved.
Okay, let me try and sum up as far as I see it. We've been asked to decide next steps. I think the next steps are probably relatively straightforward, and that is that first of all we go back to the authors of this request, David Walker from the Bowls Club, Jason Atkinson from the Tennis Club and Graham Snelling from the Rugby Football Club, and suggest that thank you very much for their offer that we are unable to move forward at this stage. A, because of issues to do with the ownership, and B, because the town council are looking more widely about advertising and badging as part of that marketing process. So essentially, this is essentially a delaying tactic as much as anything else until such time we can move forward with a clearer decision. The only other thing I would add to that is that, and I've made this point before in this committee in relation to particularly the bowls club and the tennis club, they do not pay commercial rates. You know, realistically, they are being cost subsidised by the town council and the ratepayer. And I think that needs to be acknowledged by the clubs in any signage that is used, personally. John?
I think if you go right that letter, I support all that you said. I would add that when we get to a stage of approving sign, we would expect the rugby club, the bowls club and the tennis club, between them to contribute 80% of the cost. I think we need to put a number on that, because to say some could be 3 and 6. And I see no reason, particularly with the cost subsidy issue, I see no reason that the Townsbury should pay to advertise 3 separate clubs who are already cost subsidised by the Townsbury. So I would add that in.
So, just to be clear, so I propose in terms of next steps, going back to them, explaining that now is not the time to do it. But do we wish to add to that John's proposal about a financial contribution as and when, or is that premature? And I think you're right, we should expect a financial contribution, but is this the time to mention it?
Well,
I think an early indication that the support that they indicated that they might be prepared to offer isn't enough, rather than putting a percentage on it, because we might ultimately ask them to pay for the whole thing. So I wouldn't want to limit ourselves to 80%, but I think there's nothing wrong in going back and putting a marker in the ground very early on and saying, we will probably be expecting you to fund
significant.
Or make a financial,
significant
contribution.
contribution.
So let's keep it as that nuance.
I think if we could just, sorry to interrupt, if we could put significant in there, at the moment, I think they're not expecting to do anything other than a write-out.
Significant financial contribution. So we're all happy with that then? Yeah.
I'd like to keep it fairly loose and not
think-
stating anything in fact, as it were, at the moment. Just saying that, because I think we're not in a, you know,
I'm
there's all sorts of
trying
aspects
to
of
keep
this
it
thing.
loose.
Yes, that's what I'm
Yeah.
really keen that we keep
Okay.
it loose.
Good.
Just so we'll support.
So I think we've agreed what those next steps
Thank you
are.
for your support,
Yes.
so that you are sort of saying
Yeah.
what I'm doing.
So if you draft a response, Lisa, and I will look at that as chair to make sure it reflects the discussion we've just had. And we'll send that off to them appropriately. Okay, in which case then we can then jump over all the other nothing to report items.
Before we move on, Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
May I, it's not on the agenda, but I noticed in the Oundle Life, an article on blooming Oundle under floral fellows to do with open space. And the topic that made my eyes widen was, we gained approval of Oundle Town Council and started cleaning bus stops and assembling barrels. Now, I've asked previously whether the bus stops are ours and received an answer no, and whether the barrels are ours and received an answer no. So what permission did we give them? I think Ian might be able to help us.
I can. We were asked about 4 years ago, the cleaning of the bus stops occurred during COVID, and I don't think we were asked in any way, shape or form about that. And I think we were then asked later he said, okay, if we cleaned your bus stops, and we said they're not our bus stops. And we were asked permission to put barrels where all the barrels are, and we said, it's fine by us, but we're not able to give you permission because we don't control the pavements, the highways. And that's fine. So they may have asked us, we didn't write the article.
No,
But they may have asked us, but we didn't say it's fine. We certainly didn't contribute anything to the barrels.
is it worth, given that it's in the real world that we gave them permission to do stuff, that we contact them and just establish what their understanding is? Because if we have a whole load of blooming Oundle things by the roadside, which if somebody crashes into one, they're going to say, well, Oundle Town Council told us we could. Whilst we would have an argument that said, no, we didn't.
Can I just see the article? I don't think Blooming Owl wrote it, but
I don't know who wrote it.
But is it something that the Oundle Town Council is interested in clarifying, is my question?
We can't technically make a decision over this because it's not an agenda item.
Sure. I don't think it needs, I raise it under this section simply because that's where I think it's an action for
Had you brought it up under any other business, it just would have been a report item. We still couldn't technically discuss it and make a decision on it. In order to facilitate your concern, which I think is a legitimate concern, which is essentially about liability. It's about liability coming back to us because of permissions we may or may not have given, and that's been either misunderstood or needs to be revisited. What I might suggest under this non-agenda item is that we put it on the agenda for next month and make a proper decision which can be minuted. Is that okay with you, James? I think that's just a suitable, because then it can be properly minuted and actions drawn. All right? So we have the agenda item for the next meeting already. And then we could perhaps just circulate that as part of the agenda item, just so we know. It might be useful to try and find out, and I can contact Caroline, the lady who puts it together, quite what the provenance of that is, because there's no author, I think, attached to it, is there?
no, it's from a business association presentation.
So I can try and ask Caroline what the provenance is as well, and then we'll have a proper discussion in a month's time. Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Let's move on to, I now jump into EM 25166, which is the marketplace markets. Now, there is an email response from Danny in NCAR, and we have been asked to decide next steps in relation to it. I'm actually going to invite John. You might, since you're mentioned in said email, you seem to have raised the issue. Also, Ian, you've been sending pictures of signs in the market as well that's kind of vaguely relevant. So I'm inviting either of you to say a little bit more before we go on and decide what the next steps are.
So my involvement was limited, I think, to acknowledging the challenge that Morag has and to acknowledge the problem we've got in determining who's got responsibility. If NNC say they can't do anything about it because they're subcontracting to us, my question was, well, if they've subcontracted to us, can we do something about it? Which would require, to Ian's point, I think he'll clarify better than I can, we need bylaws there to say that if you park on the marketplace during the hours of midnight till 6, we will take whatever action, would get your car towed away, something like that.
Yeah.
It then went back to Danny, who said, basically, if you can find somebody who can give us the relevant paperwork, we can move forward. And it doesn't seem to me as though we've moved any further forward than that. So to me, I think it's, accepting that Ian will have something to say in a moment, to me it's whether asking Lisa to go back to go to NNC to find out if they've got any wiggle room, or we've got any wiggle room. If they're not having responsibility for the place, if we've hired it, can we enforce our own parking regulations? That's the question I would ask for NNC. If the answer is yes, great, we can move forward. If the answer is no, I'm stuck.
Do you want to expand? or-
Yeah, I think so. I'm not aware of all the background apart from what I've read yesterday. Who at NNC, Lisa, has said they can't enforce the no parking regulations?
Traffic warden,
Which traffic wards? Have we taken that up with,
the ones that are on patrol quite a lot.
and have we taken up with the parking enforcement people?
I haven't spoken directly to Ashley, although we had him come and visit to talk to us once, didn't we? So
Yes, and-
whether we brought it up within there.
Phil and I met the parking enforcement people about a month and a half ago in the marketplace. If we'd known about this, we could have asked them then and there. One of the interesting conversations we had with him, who was their team leader of the 10 of them, was we talked about parking on bus stops, and he made the point that the bus stop outside Bings is a bus stop, and it's NNC wanted to be a bus stop, and they love it as a bus stop, but he can't enforce parking regulations on the bus stop, because the sign on the bus stop doesn't say there are any parking enforcements, even though it's a bus stop. And so we, via him, went back to NNC Rail and Bus Department. I don't know why they've got a rail department, but they've got a rail and bus department, who said, we love that bus stop. And I said, but the signage is wrong, they can't enforce it. They went, oh, okay. I think they're talking. Now, I don't expect anything's going to happen before I die, but the reason I put the sign is my reading of it says cars and light vans only, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday and Saturday, 8 AM to 6 PM, waiting limited to 1 hour, return prohibited within 1 hour. Market traders vehicles only, Thursday to 6, unloading only. I didn't see anywhere on there the words, you can't park in the marketplace on Thursday. And I presume we, along with Northampton County Council highways back in whenever the marketplace got reorganised, 2010, 2015, whatever it was, probably came up with those signs. And I suspect we need to find out how those signs were created and then recreate them with different wording on them.
I think it's more straightforward, rather than going back to saying how they created, can we change them? More straightforward to say, we want them changed to this, and it doesn't matter how they were.
To which the answer will be, I suspect, from Northants Highways, we need to go through the traffic regulation order approach, which takes 18 months consultation and then 2 to 3 years to enact.
Use the old Chinese proverb about trees, and just start that process as soon as possible.
That's why I was wondering if we could find the documents from 2010 to explain, could we just change the wording? Because obviously the wording doesn't quite meet our needs. That was my interpretation when I took the photos.
So, unless there are any other observations, I think we've been asked to decide next steps. In a sense, I think the next steps are kind of in the email from Danny itself, in that he specifically says that we basically need to find an actual human being, as if there are any other kinds of human beings in NCC, who can actually provide us with the parking regs, the specified orders and bylaws, etc., etc. That seems to me, to see if we have got wiggle room, to be the initial step.
Yep.
And until we've actually established what we can and can't do, that's as far as we can take it.
I hadn't realised that the information came from a parking and traffic warden who may not be fully appraised of or aware of all the parking regulations. So I agree with that as a process.
So, Val, sorry.
Roads are controlled by 3 different bodies according
Yes.
to their
The nature of the road.
size or importance. And we have always had problems, but they seem to put, every time there's a new bus provision, if you like, so they can put a bus stop up and it never gets taken away again. They're all,
Well, as
because
we
there
noticed,
is no legislation to say how you do it.
yeah.
And I think this is the trouble.
Well, it is indeed, but what we've clearly, I think, got to do is essentially what Danny is recommending in the email, which unfortunately means that it's over to you, Lisa, by the sounds of it.
Right.
So I don't think we need to vote on that. That is effectively what we've decided as next steps. We basically need to try and nobble someone in NCC and try and find out exactly, as it says here, what the specified orders and bylaws are.
Yeah.
Because until we know that, we don't know what we can and can't do. And it may be that we can change the sign because the bylaws allow us, but until we've seen them, who knows? Okay, I'm going to move on. And you will see that the rest of the agenda is all NTR, apart from the very last one, EN 25173, any other business report only. I'm going to go around, starting with you, Owen.
Nope.
James, you've had your
Nothing
say
else.
already, kind of. John?
It says towns, at 170, town CCTV update see report.
Oh, sorry,
I don't
yes.
see any report, I'm not aware of any update.
No, I didn't see that there is anything to update on that. Town
It was just
CCTV.
about the
It's mentioned on that,
camera milestones.
the pixelation.
Yeah, it's been out and
It's
had a look
mentioned
at
in
it,
the report.
and they said it's working fine, they just said that if you are
It
looking at
says
the camera in.
cameras checked and all okay.
Yeah.
I think that's all it is. So, so we are now back on any other business. John, any other thing other than what you just
No.
mentioned? Ian?
Two things. One is the Greenway.
Yeah.
Somehow, being a Greenway champion meant I got to climb on the roof of Kettering Library just before Christmas. Don't ask, it seemed a good idea. It was quite interesting. I got talking to lots of people about lots of things, and they're still trying to progress the Greenway at this end of the county. So I'm meeting with someone called David Baker next week, and there's some other ideas in the fire. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I met with someone from Mean Rivers Trust today to show him where Snipe Meadow is, because they didn't know it existed. He got quite excited, and I know there were lots of emails flying around about Anglia water grants and stuff like that, Riverside, etc. He's going away to have a think, see if there's anything he can do to apply sort of, or help us work with the other landowners to connect the Riverside Walk in some way. So watch this space.
Excellent.
Okay, good.
I read today in yet another free newspaper or version of magazine, call it what you will,
Yes.
that landed in my hands. That there's going to be a painting buildings with fun paintings to brighten towns up, and that we're part of Northampton. I've got very excited about this, and there's a team somewhere in Kettering, I think. It worried me because we've got, they were talking about it coming to Oundle. That fear got into me.
Well,
There was no suggestion that they were going to kind of seek the view of the residents or
well,
anything else.
unless it's outside of the conservation area, it would require permission from.
Exactly,
planning
but
permission
there
in
was
the first
nothing in
place.
the article to indicate that any of this has been taken into account.
We could slap it on the outside of Fletton House, cheer everybody up. But not the courthouse, because that's in the conservation area. Or Jones Strong, perhaps.
Well, I think we need to bring it to the attention of the marketing group.
Well, maybe you could email Ian or draw it to his attention when you next see him. I'm not quite sure, I don't know quite what the article is you're referring to, but.
No, I should have brought it with me, but
Yeah, if
I
you
thought most people would have had it. It's sort of,
It would be helpful.
it's bigger than the usual free ones we get.
There was an A4 thing that arrived in my letterbox today, but I
Right,
haven't looked
that
at it.
would be it. Have a look.
It arrived at our house, so it's residing in the circular file. If it's threatening to a paint emblem, maybe that's something we should circulate around here.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
It's a full council rather than just a marketing group.
Mm.
Because it's not just marketing, if it's going to paint the town.
Mm.
I think full council.
Potentially go to planning.
Indeed, maybe it's worth photocopying if you can and sending it around by email or.
Yeah, that'd be
You
helpful.
may all have a look.
Yeah. Oh,
Because
I'll
it
probably
only
have to
came
treat mine
today.
from the recycling bin. Which
Yeah.
reminds me,
That
I
was
actually put it
might
out
not
today.
have gone in mine, but
Right, okay, so, now on to me, I do have any other business. Very quickly, I have been emailed by the lawyer who works at the Rugby Football Club today. She previously notified us of concern over some trees, that she was worried that might fall down and hurt somebody. And has asked whether or not we've taken any action. I've notified Lisa. I think Ian, you had also taken pictures of trees, and we're not quite sure whether they
I
are.
think
in
it's the
fact
same tree on
trees.
by,
Is this from their nature report? Or
I'm
October,
not
November?
sure what it's from, she just said it was via Max that they were worried about this tree. And I think it's the one in the top left-hand corner
Yeah.
that
And I
next to
think
you.
if we could establish whether it's the same tree, because our
It's
tree
like-
surgeon person has already looked at the one that you were concerned about.
The photo looks slightly different, but it's the only one there that's got a big hole in it.
Mm,
Well, if we could just iron that out
Yeah.
between us, that'd be useful. In which case then, at 3 minutes to 7, I declare the meeting closed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I asked this question before. We have this meeting at 6 o'clock, whereas every other meeting